There's a type of person who, the moment they notice a squeaky door hinge, a burnt-out light bulb, or a crack in the wall, they fix it. That day, that hour, sometimes that exact minute. And if you've ever lived with someone like that, or if you are that person, you already know there's something deeper going on beneath the surface. Because this isn't just about being tidy. It isn't about being a perfectionist. It's about how their brain is fundamentally wired differently from most people, and the psychological advantages that wiring gives them in every single area of life. Think about the last small problem you noticed but didn't fix. Maybe it was a notification you kept dismissing, a response you kept delaying, a small crack in a relationship you told yourself wasn't a big deal yet. Now ask yourself honestly, is it still there? Has it gotten bigger? Because here's what psychology has known for decades that most people never apply to their own lives. Small problems don't stay small. They breathe. They grow. They quietly consume your mental energy in ways you don't even notice until it's too late. The people who fix things immediately aren't just organized. They've unconsciously mastered one of the most powerful psychological principles in human behavior. And by the end of this, you're going to see your own daily habits in a completely different light. Let's start with something that happened in a laboratory in the 1920s. A Soviet psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik was sitting in a cafe in Vienna when she noticed something strange about the waiters. They could remember every detail of an order that hadn't been served yet. Which table wanted extra sauce, who asked for no onions, which drink was still pending. But the moment the order was delivered and the task was complete, they forgot it almost instantly. Their brain released it. It was done. Zeigarnik took this observation back to her lab and turned it into one of the most replicated findings in cognitive psychology. Unfinished tasks stay open in your mind. They loop.
They interrupt. They quietly sit in the background of your consciousness, taking up space, demanding attention, waiting to be resolved. This became known as the Zeigarnik effect. Now think about what happens when you have not one unfinished task, but 20.
30. A leaky faucet you haven't called the plumber about. An email you've been meaning to send for 2 weeks. A small argument that was never properly resolved. A habit you told yourself you'd start on Monday? Your brain isn't ignoring these things. It's holding all of them open, like browser tabs you never close, quietly draining your mental battery every single day. The person who fixes problems immediately doesn't have those tabs open. Their mind is cleaner, lighter, more available for the things that actually matter. And this isn't a coincidence. It's a direct result of a psychological trait researchers call proactive coping. Most people cope reactively. Something goes wrong, they respond. Something breaks, they deal with it when they have no choice. But proactive copers operate differently. They scan their environment constantly, not from anxiety, but from a place of calm control. They see a potential problem forming, and they move toward it before it becomes urgent. This means they almost never experience the kind of overwhelming stress that comes from a dozen small things exploding at once, because they never let a dozen small things accumulate. Studies on proactive coping show these individuals report significantly lower levels of chronic stress, higher emotional stability, and stronger feelings of personal control over their lives. That last part is critical. Psychologists call it internal locus of control. The belief that what happens in your life is primarily determined by your own actions, not by luck or circumstance or other people. And fixing a small problem the moment you see it is one of the purest expressions of that belief. You're telling your brain over and over again, I am the one in charge here. Every single time you do that, your brain reinforces the neural pathway connected to agency and competence. You get a small but real hit of dopamine. Your self-efficacy, your belief in your own ability to handle things, gets quietly stronger. It sounds almost too simple, but this is exactly how character is built. Not through dramatic moments of willpower, but through thousands of tiny decisions that nobody else even notices. Now here's where it connects to something most people don't expect: relationships. Because the psychology of fixing small problems immediately doesn't just apply to leaky faucets and overdue emails. It applies to every relationship in your life. The people who address a small tension in a friendship before it festers. The couples who have the slightly uncomfortable conversation early before it turns into resentment. The colleagues who clear up a misunderstanding on day one instead of letting it quietly poison the working dynamic for months.
Research in relationship psychology consistently shows that what destroys most long-term relationships isn't one catastrophic event. It's the accumulation of small, unaddressed moments, a comment that was never acknowledged, a need that was never voiced, a pattern that was noticed but never named. Gottman's famous research on couples found that the difference between relationships that last and those that fall apart often came down to what people chose to do with the small moments.
The ones who survived weren't better at handling crises. They were better at not letting small things become crises in the first place. And then there's the compound effect. This is the part that most people completely miss. When you consistently fix small things immediately, you're not just solving individual problems.
You're building a version of yourself. Every small action taken promptly becomes a brick in the architecture of your identity. Over time, you become someone who handles things, someone who doesn't let stuff pile up.
Someone who others trust because they've watched you follow through on the small things, and they know you'll follow through on the big things too. The reverse is also true, and this is worth sitting with for a moment. Every time you notice a small problem and walk past it, you're also building a version of yourself, one that tolerates disorder, one that delays, one whose brain gradually learns that the gap between seeing something and doing something is wide and acceptable. That lesson scales. It moves from the squeaky hinge to the important conversation, from the small task to the significant goal. The habit of avoidance doesn't stay contained, it spreads. There's a concept in urban planning called the broken windows theory, introduced by criminologists James Wilson and George Kelling. The idea is that visible signs of disorder, a broken window left unrepaired, graffiti left uncleaned, send a signal. They communicate that no one is watching, no one cares, and further disorder is acceptable.
The environment itself starts to deteriorate, not because of one major event, but because one small sign of neglect invited more neglect. The same principle operates inside your own life. One unaddressed problem signals to your brain that problems here go unaddressed, and your brain, efficient as it is, takes note. But here's the flip side of that theory that nobody talks about. The moment you fix that one broken window, the signal reverses. Order invites order. Action invites more action. The person who fixes the small thing immediately isn't just solving a problem. They're sending a signal to themselves, to their own nervous system, that this is a place where things get handled. And that signal is more powerful than any motivational speech. So what separates these people from everyone else? It isn't energy. It isn't time. It isn't some rare personality trait you either have or you don't. It's a decision that was made so many times it stopped feeling like a decision. It became identity. It became the automatic response. See the problem? Close the loop. Move forward. The most interesting thing about people who fix small problems immediately isn't the problems they fix. It's the life they quietly build while everyone else is still making a list of things they'll get to someday. Someday is where most potential goes to disappear.